Welcome to the first episode of Voice Cues from Trans Folks Like You, the series where I answer your most common questions about trans voice training. Today, we're kicking off with one of the all-time greats, maybe even the
GOAT.
Will my new voice ever become my default? Hi, I'm Renee, and I'm a gender-affirming voice teacher. And I get it. Voice training can feel like mental gymnastics at first. You're constantly thinking about pitch, resonance, weight, emphasis, inflection, and trying to sound like yourself on top of that. So it makes total sense to wonder, when will this start to feel automatic? When will this voice just happen without all the effort? So let's break it down. First, your voice is a habit. If you've never thought of your voice as a habit, you're not alone. Most people don't. It feels like your voice is just you. But how you speak is actually a learned behavior, a set of muscular patterns and coordinated habits that you've practiced so consistently over time that they have become automatic. Remember, this is part of why accents exist, because we learn language and how to speak by imitating others, usually your parents. You're not just learning the words, you're learning how to say them and then ingraining that over years. It's not like you came out of the womb sounding like you do now. And that's good news because it means you can learn a new way of using your voice. And with enough repetition, that new pattern can become your new default. This idea is backed by neuroscience. In The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explains how the brain creates automatic behaviors through something called the habit loop. This process within our brains is a three-step loop. First, there's a cue, a trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode and which habit to use. Then there's the routine, which can be physical or mental or emotional. Finally, there's a reward, which helps your brain figure out if this particular loop is worth remembering for the future. The habit loop. We're not just talking about brushing your teeth or tying your shoes. This same loop governs how you speak, when you speak, and even how your voice reacts in different situations. Let me give you a metaphor I like to use with my students. Imagine your brain is a giant, overgrown jungle. Your old voice habits are like a well-paved road, clear, easy, and fast to walk down because you've traveled it every day for years. Now, you're trying to build a new path, one that leads to the voice you actually want to use. At first, you're bushwhacking. It's hard to find, it's easy to lose, and honestly, you might get discouraged and end up back on the old road. But every time you take the new path, it gets a little easier. A few branches clear, some grass gets trampled. Eventually, the new path becomes more familiar and the old one starts to get overgrown. That's what it's like when your new voice becomes your default. Shout out to my own voice teacher who taught me that metaphor, Madeline Palmer. This also ties into something brilliant that Tallulah Breslin said when I interviewed them in our recent video on voice feminization surgery.
So I think of it as there being these two voices, right? So you start out and you have this low effort habitual voice, and then you have a higher effort voice, and then you have a goal voice, right? So when I'm not thinking about my voice at all, it's here. When I try to talk in a more feminine way, it's here. And then when I'm thinking about what I ultimately want with my goal, it's here. And over time, this low effort and high effort voice shift towards the voice that you want. And at a point that people are satisfied when they're not thinking about their voice, and that when they are thinking about their voice, it's even closer. That's kind of when they graduate themselves and say, I'm good.
I'm done, yeah.
Often as people go through the process, those changes are slow. And so they won't realize that their habitual voice has changed. And they'll only see that if they put in more effort, they're able to get farther. And so comparing recordings can be really helpful.
That idea really stuck with me because we don't always notice our habitual voice changing. It happens gradually. But one day you catch yourself laughing or talking on autopilot and realize, oh wow, that sounded like me. To understand how your new voice can eventually feel automatic, we need to look at how the brain builds and stores habits. One of the most fascinating examples shared in The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg comes from the work of researcher Larry Squire and a man named Eugene Pauly. After a brain infection, Eugene lost the ability to form new memories. He couldn't tell you where the kitchen was or remember having breakfast, but somehow, without thinking, he would walk to the kitchen and make breakfast every day. He went on walks around his neighborhood, followed familiar routes, and always made it back home even though he couldn't draw a map or explain where he lived. This seemed impossible until researchers looked at which parts of his brain were still functioning. The area responsible for memory, the medial temporal lobe, had been destroyed. But his basal ganglia, the deep brain structure responsible for storing habits, was still intact.
Check your ganglia.
The basal ganglia is kind of like your brain's autopilot. It takes over once you've practiced a routine enough times, freeing up your conscious brain to think about other things. It's why you can drive home without remembering each turn or sing along to a song without planning your next word. In Eugene's case, he was forming new habits like walking the same path without being aware of it at all. And that's the power of habit.
Sorry, force of habit.
So what does this mean for voice training? It means that the patterns you're practicing, resonance, pitch, pacing, don't have to stay effortful forever. Once repeated enough, they can be stored as habits. They can become your default. You're not tricking your brain or forcing it to fake something. This isn't one weird hack. You're just building a real, stable voice pattern that over time can run automatically. And it all happens because of how your brain is wired to learn. So, will your new voice ever become your default? Yes, but not instantly, not perfectly, and not all at once. And that can be frustrating. We live in a world now where demands on our time are immediate and our access to information is also immediate, but we're human at the end of the day. So many of the systems in our bodies are designed to improve with slow, consistent effort. So as contradictory as it may feel in 2025, accepting that will help you improve. It will happen through consistent practice, small cues, rewarding experiences, and yes, sometimes just keeping at it even when it feels clunky. One day that jungle path will be the main road. Your default voice will reflect who you actually are, not who you were taught to sound like. If you have a question you'd like answered for the next installment in this series, let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to get more free trans voice tips directly to your inbox, sign up for my newsletter at the link in the description. That's all for today. I've been Renee, and I hope this helps. Sound like yourself on top of that. Let's do that again.
Trying to sound like a giant truck.
I know, the truck, and I up, so I think we should have to do that again.
The loudest consistent.
I know,
car,
so loud.
Truck car. No.
You can like really hear the drama, you know?
Yeah. Jesus.
Let's build a soundstage.
Yeah.